Hi, I'm Ellen from the Chili Dog, and we're heading into week 3 of the It's Alright Mystery Knit Along, hosted by my friends from Makers Mercantile. At this point, you're probably far enough along to be wondering how we're going to weave in the yarn tail from the cast on to make it inconspicuous, because there's no wrong side to this project. So neatness is definitely going to count as we're weaving things in. I'm going to start weaving in using duplicate stitch across this section of knit stitches. And even though duplicate stitch generally isn't my favorite way to weave in a tail, in this case, it can help hide any tension issues you may have had with these last few cast on stitches. Duplicate stitch means you're basically just tracing the path of the yarn across a row of stitches with that yarn tail. And I'll show you what I mean here just with this little sample swatch I have. You're really just going to be tracing the path of your knit stitches across a single row. So it helps to kind of understand how they're constructed and how that yarn flows around and across the row. Duplicate stitch adds just a slight bit of thickness to your fabric, but in a piece like this, it's unlikely that you're ever going to notice it. So let's get started. So I'm going to weave in my yarn tail from left to right, and I'm going to go under these first two legs right here, and the V on that is kind of pointing up. I'll pull the yarn tail through. And now my yarn tail is coming out at the same place as this stitch right here. So I want to go under, I'll trace its path up and go under the same two legs of the next stitch above that the knit stitch is. Trace back down over this leg. So I'm tracing down this one and then under two legs. My yarn is coming up here, so I'm going to follow the stitch leg up. And then left to right under two legs, right there. There's the stitch, that leg that I want to follow down. So I follow it down. And then under two legs. And you can see here, my yarn tail is blending in very nicely to my stitches, which is what you want to happen. So here's where the yarn comes up. I'm going to follow that yarn leg up. And under two. Oops. I'll follow this leg down and then under two. This leg up and under two. This leg down and under two. And once I get over to the side here, instead of continuing on in duplicate stitch, we have a really nice structure in the pattern right here up the diagonal that will help us conceal the yarn tail even more. So now that I've finished this little bit in duplicate stitch, I am just going to go ahead and trace right up, and I think I need to go under right here to get where I need to be. I'm just going to trace the path by going under each of these pearls up along this structure. Really, you can catch a bunch here at a time. So I'll just pull through of those. And I generally weave in farther than I really need to, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Nothing ever comes undone that way. I'm just going under each of these little pearl bumps and catching them. And of course, this is not the only way to weave in your tail. It's just what I happen to use. It's fairly invisible there. So once you get far enough up, you can just trim that tail. And I don't trim right next to the fabric. I usually leave about 1/4 inch because things will shift as you wash it. And now my yarn tail is completely invisible in our It's All Right Möbius. So I hope you have a great week of knitting and concealing in that little yarn tail. If you'd like more information about the knit along, you can head over to the Makers Mercantile group on Ravelry and look for the It's All Right MKAL discussion thread. Until we stitch again, happy knitting!